and ask the blessing over the Sunday school lesson and the offering.
Dear Lord Jesus, Heavenly Father, we come to you today to give you great thanks for this new day and our safety through the week. As we go into our class today, we ask that you bless our classes and help to illuminate our minds. We also ask you, Lord, to bless this here offering we're about to take up and guide us in a way that we please thee, how we use it. We ask all of these things in your name, in our Heavenly Father's name. Amen.
All right, turn to the book of Ruth. I like the way he put that. We need our minds illuminated. And the Bible's, that's what it's for, is one of the things it does is it illuminates our mind, doesn't it? Ruth is a short book. It won't take us long at the pace we're going here, but I'd like to look at another book like this after Ruth. Chapter 2 is where we're going to start today. And those of you who were here last time, you should be up to sort of speed, if you will. The last verse of chapter 1 sort of sets the stage for chapter 2. It says, "So Naomi returned, and Ruth the Moabitess, her daughter-in-law, with her, which returned out of the country of Moab. And they came to Bethlehem in the beginning of barley harvest." So Bethlehem is the setting. Bethlehem, probably the most, outside of Jerusalem, I don't know of any place that's more familiar to Bible readers in Israel than Bethlehem, and the significance of it. Place where Jesus was born, the city of David, they call it, or the birthplace of David. For the tribe of Judah, Bethlehem is very significant. And so that's where they come home to, or come back to. It makes it clear that they're returning. Now, Ruth is not from here. She's never been here before that we can tell. But in her commitment, she's sort of saying, I'm going to be one of you. She doesn't feel she is one of them. She doesn't presume to be one of them. But she's declared to her mother-in-law, that's what I want to do. That's where my heart is. But you'll see that Ruth doesn't have expectations. She's not a questioner. She's not at least she's not on paper. The Bible doesn't record her being a questioner, a challenger, an analyzer. She just takes things as they are. What she had in her heart, the Bible doesn't really say too much. Her actions, Ruth's actions, are her heart. Would God that was true of all of us, that our actions were our heart. So oftentimes our actions and our heart are not in line. And so this is not a Christian book in a lot of ways, but yet it is. There's no gospel here, but yet there is. So we'll try to bring out as much of that as we can. So it's barley harvest. And so they come home at a time of the late in the year, you might say. Over half the year's gone, and it's time to harvest. So chapter 2, "And Naomi had a kinsman of her husband's, a mighty man of wealth of the family of Elimelech, and his name was Boaz." So remember, Naomi's husband, his name was Elimelech. So the Bible's just letting us know here that there's this person. They're not introduced to him yet. They're not. Ruth has no idea who this is. Naomi knows who he is, but she doesn't know where he's at. She hasn't presumed anything. They just showed up. So the Bible's just saying, know this. Know that she has a kinsman of her husband's. He's a mighty man of wealth. Now, he's not Bill Gates. He's not Elon Musk. But in their setting, he would have been like that, okay? To us, we might look at him and say, well, he's not much. But in their setting, in their time, in their culture, he was. And we're not told this so much, but we have to infer it. And it's not hard to show that he's an older man. He's not a kid. He's well up in age, but he's never married. And not that we can see. So this man's name is Boaz. And Ruth, verse 2, the Moabitess, said unto Naomi, let me now go to the field and glean ears of corn after him in whose sight I shall find grace. And she said unto her, go, my daughter. So right away, they get back, and Ruth says, okay, tomorrow, she almost asked for permission, really. And she says, I want you to let me do this. I don't want you to fight me on this. I want you to let me do this. Let me go out and become a gleaner. Now, a gleaner is someone who goes behind. You can't do this no more because the machines, they don't leave anything. But I can remember doing this. We'd get permission from a farmer and we'd go out and we would glean. And you could get a pickup truck full of corn, ears of corn. We're going to talk about corn too in a minute. But you could do that. And the pickers weren't that good. Vern, they don't leave nothing. You can't do that no more. You could go out there, you might find a few kernels or some accidental spill of a few kernels, but you don't find no whole ears of corn laying in the field. So a gleaner was somebody who came and said, all right, the harvesters have done their job. There was a law for this too. So if under the Mosaic law, you weren't to prevent people from doing this, okay? Because God was making provision for poorer people. So this is for poorer people, people who didn't have fields of their own and didn't have a way to get food. They could do this. Remember when Jesus and his disciples were walking through the field and the disciples were picking some of the grain and eating it as they walked, and the Pharisees got all worked up, and Jesus said, well, they said, well, this is Sabbath day. You're not allowed to do that. Now, the Bible talks about Sabbath, and the Bible talks about letting people walk through your field. You couldn't take it with you, okay? When you did this walking through your neighbor's field and eating, you couldn't harvest it. That you couldn't glean until after harvest. But before harvest, when the stuff was ripe and was ready to harvest, you could walk through your neighbor's field. He could walk through yours. That was just a hospitality thing as you traveled. But this was a special occasion. It's harvest time, and it's sort of the Lord's way of saying, look, God, I blessed you with a great harvest. Now, you don't stop anybody from coming behind and picking up what you don't get the first time through. So I want to ask a question. How did she glean ears of corn if it was the barley harvest? Because corn is not big ears of corn like we have here in America. That wasn't there. So in the Bible, corn means grain. It's like saying kernels or grain. Grain is a generic term, right? We say it's a field of grain. What kind of grain? Well, that's wheat. That's rice. That's rye. That's barley. We call it a grain, right? Or kernels. What are those kernels of? Those are kernels of wheat. These are kernels of barley. These are kernels of buckwheat. These are kernels of corn. We use the word corn, we think of a big old cob-like thing. That's not what this in the Bible. That's an American thing. So corn in the Bible means grain, kernel. Jesus said, except a corn of wheat fall into the ground and die, it abideth alone. He's using corn in place of kernel. Except a kernel of wheat, except a corn of wheat. Joseph predicted the famine, and the corn was blasted by the wind and blighted. God was prophesying a famine. He wasn't talking about fields of, American corn. He was talking about barley or whatever grain they were growing. When he calls it corn, he's just talking about that grain. So this is barley harvest. So we know what kind of grain it is. And when they call it ears of corn, they're talking about ears of barley, okay, that you could take, you could rub them in your hands, and you could eat them. We think of field corn. I don't see how you could eat that stuff. It's, you can't rub that in your hands and eat it. It's got to be cooked or something. Well, they're gonna parch it and eat it too. But we're talking about that. So that's it's not very spiritual. There's no doctrine in that. But it's a matter of your education. When you're reading the Bible and you get confused and somebody says, well, I don't understand. Corn, how can you do that with corn? He's talking about, the Bible uses it as grain or kernels. And so she says, look, I'm going to go out, I'm going to go to work and glean, because she knew that was a practice. I'm sure this was a practice in Moab, that you could go out after the harvest and glean. Maybe they'd even talked about it. And maybe Naomi said, well, that's a possibility. But here's Ruth saying this, let me do this. She treated her mother-in-law as a mother-in-law. She said, I want you to let me do this. And it's not like that she could have stopped her physically, but she would just, it wasn't a way of, it wasn't like Naomi was her boss, but she would just say, I want you to let me do this. Let me go out and work for our living. So right away, Ruth is ready to go to work. Her actions showed her heart. And I want to glean ears of corn after him in whose sight I shall find grace. What that means is, whoever will let me and be merciful to me, that's what I want to do. I'm just going to go out there and try. Now, half of our problem in this country is we don't try. We want to be given. We have fear. We're busy. We want to be entertained. We got to try. And our children, they suffer for that. They suffer for lack of trying. She's going to try. She said, whoever side I find grace in. She said unto her, go, my daughter. Hey, Naomi's saying, now that's what I'm all for that. You go do that. And she went, in verse 3, and came and gleaned in the field after the reapers. So she's going to pick up what they drop. And her hap was to light on a part of the field belonging unto Boaz, who was of the kindred of Elimelech. Now, the story's getting good. Because the Bible says, well, that was her hap. And as far as Ruth knows and Naomi knows, it just so happened. But we know that it was of the Lord. And a lot of stuff happens every day. And we think that it's just our hap. But it's really the goodness of God. Now, it's easy to point fingers and say, well, my neighbor, he doesn't love the Lord, and he fares just as good as I do. How do you not know that that's not the hand of the Lord also? The Bible says it rains on the just and the unjust. God said, you ought to be good to one another. He said, aren't I good to the evil and the froward? I'm good to them. Be like me. Well, that's convicting, because I want to talk to the nice people. I don't want to talk to the bad people. They say bad words. And they talk about bad things. I know how you feel. But God said, I'm good to everybody, even if they're bad. I'm good to them. Say, well, he doesn't just, stop all the evil from happening. Now you're not happy with the way he runs the universe, see? And not willing to admit that maybe we ask for some of that. And we bring some of that on ourselves. So this principle of sowing and reaping is right here. Right here it is. You want some grain? Ruth says, I'm going to get up off the couch. I'm going to go out there and try to find some. And whoever will let me, the first field I come to, and they'll let me do it, I'm going to do it. Now we're going to find out why that she would wonder about that too. So she happened into his field. And behold, Boaz came from Bethlehem and said unto the reapers, the Lord be with you. They answered him, The Lord bless thee. So these are Jewish men and Jewish people. And this is a time in the time of the judges when evidently Israel was not running after idols. So these people were what we would call pious Jews. That is to say, they believed in the Lord and they acknowledged the Lord and they considered each other the people of the Lord. You can read in the Old Testament many cases when the Jews did not acknowledge God and didn't say, the Lord bless you. So this here is a good time in the nation of Israel. And so these are pious Jews. They believe in the Lord. Then said Boaz unto his servant that was set over his reapers, whose damsel is this? So he didn't recognize her. Boaz went to the foreman, you might say, and said, whose little girl is that? Now, we have to let this unfold, but what we're going to find out is she looked different, and she was different. I think she might have been dressed different. And also, in a small place like Bethlehem, you just would have known everybody. And he didn't know who she was. So he said, whose damsel is this? Who's this girl? And the servant that was set over the reapers answered and said, it is the Moabitish damsel that came back with Naomi out of the country of Moab. And she said, I pray you, let me glean and gather after the reapers among the sheaves. So she came, and hath continued even from the morning until now, that she tarried a little in the house. So he said, look, don't you know? This is Ruth, the Moabite. And it turns out that Boaz had heard, but he just didn't know who she was. And now he makes the connection. And it turns out that this foreman, he's a pretty good guy. Because when she walked up to him and said, could I glean in your field? He said, yeah, go ahead. So Boaz, his man in charge, he agreed to this before he even asked the boss. So these men they know about this practice, and he knew that she was a stranger, and he let her go out there. And he said, she's been out there all day, except for the little time she was here in the house. She's been out there from morning till right now. So evidently it was quite a bit, into the day, which shows, in other words, what he's saying is, that girl's a worker. She's been out there all day. She hasn't stopped. Then said Boaz unto Ruth, so he walked right up to her. Hearest thou not, my daughter? So, okay, it sounds like she's deaf or she's not listening, but he's not. What he's saying is, I want you to hear what I'm about to say, and I want you to take it to heart. Really, really listen to me right now. That's what he means when he says that. Hearest thou not, my daughter? Go not to glean in another field, neither go from hence, but abide here fast by my maidens. Let thine eyes be on the field that they do reap, and go thou after them. Have I not charged the young men that they shall not touch thee? And when thou art athirst, go into the vessels, and drink of that which the young men have drawn. So he walked up to her and said, now I want you to hear this. And I think the point of that statement is because I'm about to say something that you might find extraordinary, but I don't want you to feel that way about it. I'm going to give you some instructions, and you're going to feel like it's not your place. But I want you to know, I really mean it. I don't want you to go around hunting for other fields to glean in. You've seen my maidens. You've recognized them now. Where they go, they know where my fields are. When they go from field to field, you follow them. I've talked to the men. They know not to lay hands on you. Now, we're going to talk about that a little bit. And so why would you have to say that? We'll get to that. And when you're thirsty, you drink water like the rest of... She's a stranger. Everybody knows she's a stranger. And it's already been noised about that she's a Moabitish girl. But there's something to that impresses everybody, but just the fact that she's a stranger and she's from out of town, she's not one of them, and I'm sure they know the Moabites don't follow the Lord. So this could have been a bad situation. So he's trying to convince her, you listen closely to what I say, and you do what I tell you to do. Then verse 10 shows that she knows there's a problem. Then she fell on her face and bowed herself to the ground and said unto him, Why have I found grace in thine eyes, that thou shouldest take knowledge of me, seeing I am a stranger? So Ruth had no expectations of anything. In fact, it almost indicates that she thought, I probably will get rejected when they find out who I am. Or they might know who I am, and at any moment they're going to reject me. Or any moment, some of the men may say, well, she's not one of our girls. We'll just do with her whatever we feel like doing. Boaz as much as hints at that when he says, I've told my men not to lay hands on you. They're not to touch you. Leave you alone. And that includes not kicking her out of the field from gleaning. But there's an impression, at least as I read this, that she might have been expecting ill treatment. But it says, why? She said, why have I found grace in thine eyes? Now this expression, grace in thine eyes, is throughout the Old Testament. Noah found grace in the eyes of the Lord. This is an expression you'll just read it over and over if you read the Old Testament. May I find grace in thy sight. So what is it saying? It's saying you're looking on me with favor. You're being merciful and graceful towards me. So mercy is sort of an attitude, and grace is sort of a doing. So we think of grace as like, well, God's grace, his mercy, they go together, but grace has in it a doing. God's grace, if he doesn't show us grace, he can feel for us all day long with mercy, but he must show us grace. He has to do something. He has to get involved. He has to open up his toolbox and use those tools. She says, I found grace in your sight, but I don't understand why. Why have you done these things for me? Why are you saying these things to me? And Boaz answered and said unto her, It hath fully been shewed me all that thou hast done unto thy mother-in-law since the death of thine husband, and how thou hast left thy father and thy mother, and the land of thy nativity, and art come unto a people which thou knewest not heretofore. The Lord recompense thy work, and a full reward be given thee of the Lord God of Israel, under whose wings thou art come to trust. That's good writing right there, man. You're at the heart of the story now, and he's saying, may God repay you for what you've done and are doing. And it's little enough for me to do this for you. You've come under God's wings. Notice he didn't say, under his wings you've come for shelter. The Bible doesn't use that. He could have said that. Could have said, you come under his wings. Imagine Jesus said, Jerusalem, Jerusalem, how often would I have gathered you as a hen gathers, her chicks. I'm not quoting word for word there, but you're familiar with it. And would have gathered you under my wings like a. You ever see that? Mom always raised chickens, and when one would hatch, a lot of times she'd let that one run free. The rest of them stayed in the pen. And when a storm would come up, her voice would change, and she would cluck a certain way, and here they come. And she would gather them under there, and here's what she's figuring on. If the storm's going to get anything, it's going to get me, and I'm going to protect the chicks. Now, chickens aren't a very bright animal. They're not geniuses. They're not picky what they eat. They get killed like really easy, It's kind of dumb move sometimes. Jump in the hog pen like it's going to be all right. It's not all right. But she knew to do that. And so Jesus said, I would have done that for Jerusalem. He's not talking to Jerusalem. They can't hear him. But he's talking about that. And he said, I would have brought you under my wings. So this idea of the wings of God, the shelter. So he could have said, under whose wings thou art come for shade from the sun and protection from the elements. But that's how the Bible says it. It says, under his wings thou art come to trust. So she's trusting in the shelter of his wings. She's coming under God's protection. She has decided that the God of Israel is the real God. And she may not understand it. Folks, you don't got to understand it. Not completely. You'll understand it better by and by. That's not what God's wanting. He wants somebody to begin to look to him. And we so often want to get everything fixed, and then we'll look to God and say we trust him. And we'll fail, and we'll say, well, God's not ready for me yet. In fact, Ruth, she was trusting in God before she got all the benefits. And before anybody said it was okay. If you say today to a person, this is a good portion of the world, if you say, I'm going to heaven someday, you're presumptuous. You are presumptuous. You say, well, God's forgiven me. You're presumptuous. Say, I'm a child of God. You're presumptuous. You have presumed on things that are not your. Where is the proof of your life? And I agree. Our lives ought to prove ought to prove our faith. It ought to justify our faith in their eyes. James talked about that. But when we make those statements, if they really understood it, and if we get them to understand it, we're not presuming. We're talking about something that's crazy, merciful, and graceful. I only say that based on a sacrifice that somebody else did for me on my behalf 2,000 years ago. I'm only taking him at his word. That's it. I've got no lightning bolt. Ruth just said, I'm going to go to Israel, and he's going to be my God, and I'm going to die with them, and I'm going to just sell out. And she had no idea how they would react. But that's what she did. So she was really trusting, come under whose wings thou art come to trust. And he said, may God bless you for what you're doing. And I'm going to join in the blessings and take part in it. And I'm going to do this. Then she said, verse 13, let me find favor in thy sight. That's like grace, favor, a little bit different. Let me find favor in thy sight, my Lord, for that thou hast comforted me, and for that thou hast spoken friendly unto thine handmaid, though I be not like unto one of thine handmaids. So you see here that she says, I know I'm different. I know I'm not like them. If nothing else, Boaz probably knew these other girls that were gleaning from a child. He knew their life, their reputation. She's not like that. He has no idea what she's been and what she's been doing. Now, he knows she was married to a Jew, and so he has no reason to say that she's a bad girl, but she just says, I'm not like one of them. I'm different. I've got a background that you don't know, not that well. And she said, I'll take whatever you got. And Boaz said unto her, now he's going to go further now. This is almost in reply to what she said. At mealtime, come thou hither, and eat of the bread, and dip thy morsel in the vinegar. You remember at the supper, Jesus, they said, well, who's going to betray you? And he looked at John, he said, well, whoever dips in the bread, takes the bread and dips it in the sop. same time I do, this next time I do, that's him. Now, they still didn't grasp it, but there might have been some conversation go on, and they lost train of thought, and Jesus picked up a piece of bread and put it in the sop, and Judas, he might have been looking away at the time, just feeling for it. He wasn't paying no attention. But Jesus knew, but they still didn't grasp it. But you see the practice? So it's a wetting of the bread. Like I would take a piece of bread, I'd probably put butter on it, right? Well, they dipped it in the sop. The thoughts of putting it in vinegar, but I don't know. Not all vinegar is not the same. I'm sure it wasn't concentrated. I'm sure it wasn't like taking a white vinegar and pouring a cup and dipping bread in it. I'm sure it was something more like an acidic wine, and it was a way of softening this hard crust of bread so that you could chew it easier. But anyway, he said, when they do that, you go ahead and you do it too. You make yourself at home, is what he's saying. And she sat beside the reapers, and he reached her parched corn, and she did eat and was sufficed and left. So they have bread, and they have this sop they dip in. They had taken some of this barley and had roasted it and cooked it. When it becomes parched, it like puffs up and becomes edible, like you could chew it. And he reached her some of that, and she sat there and ate that till she was done. You're going to find out what she did was she ate what she could, and he gave her whatever he gave her. She ate what she wanted, and she took the rest of it, and she bundled it up and kept it. Because Naomi's at home, and she's going to want something to eat right away. So she did that. And she did eat, was sufficed, and left. And when she was risen up to glean, so she went back to work. Boaz commanded his young men, saying, let her glean even among the sheaves, and reproach her not. So he went over and said, hey, if she strays out of the path and gets over where you haven't reaped yet, don't say nothing to her. So he could see that she maybe wasn't a pro at this, and everybody's not perfect. And you might, if you're a reaper, you might have to say to any of these maidens at any time, well, slow down here a little bit. Let us get this first, and then you come. People just going along, they're gleaning. You're getting ahead of the game here. You're gleaning where we haven't reached yet. It's too easy. You got to wait. Well, he said, if she does that, don't you say nothing to her. Listen to this. And let fall also some of the handfuls of purpose for her, and leave them, that she may glean them, and rebuke her not. So he said, I want you to cheat a little bit. Cheat's not the right word, but he said, I want you to cheat a little bit and just pretend that you lose some of it. See, as you're gleaning, or as you're reaping, you're gathering, right? And you reap and you gather, and pretty soon you got a big armload, a sheaf of this barley stalks with barley heads on the end of it. And then you might take that and hit that and knock all the probably that much of it off so that you don't lose any of the grain into a basket or something like that. But he said, go ahead and spill some. And do it right in front of her, so where she goes along, it's easier work for her. Folks, he doesn't have any intentions at all other than he wants to bless her. He's not hitting on her. He has no thoughts of that. We're going to see that. He's not trying to get anything out of this other than she's been good to one of our people. And she stuck with her when everybody else was dead and left her and came back with her. And she's out here working in the field all day long to supply bread for that old lady. That's of the Lord. And I want to do something. I want to be God's hand here and bless. So she gleaned in the field until even, so all day long, and beat out that she had gleaned, and it was about an ephah of barley. So she right then and there took it, what she'd gotten, beat it out, which meant to say she knocked the grains out like on a rock or some flat place, and where it was more the waste, the chaff and everything was more gone. And you could take it home. Now you're still going to have to grind it. You couldn't just go home and eat it right now. But an ephah of barley is about 3/5 of a bushel. So it weighed about 50 pounds, 30 to 50 pounds, right, somewhere. They're estimating these numbers, but 20 quarts or dry quarts or something like that. That's a good day's work. Some estimates say that the two of them could have maybe ate for like 10 days off of that. So she worked hard and got a good day's work. She took it up and went into the city, and her mother-in-law saw what she had gleaned. And she brought forth and gave to her that she had reserved after she was sufficed. So it refers back to the parched corn. Said she brought that out and said, look, I got something for you. Here's supper. And so Naomi had something to eat right then and there. Because the barley wasn't ready to bake or anything. And her mother-in-law said unto her, where hast thou gleaned today? And where wroughtest thou? Blessed be he that did take knowledge of thee. So somebody saw your situation and really took care of you, because this is more than you get gleaning. This is really good. Well, she didn't know about the handfuls on purpose and getting into the good stuff before it was harvested. She didn't know about any of that. And she said, somebody really took knowledge of you, felt sorry for you, and saw your situation and blessed you. And she showed her mother-in-law with whom she had wrought, and said, the man's name with whom I wrought today is Boaz. Now, that shows us that even though the Bible has told us all about Boaz and how it all works, that Naomi hadn't thought about it. She knew about it, but she hadn't really considered that. Now she's changed her mind. She says, and Naomi said unto her daughter-in-law, blessed be he of the Lord, who hath not left off his kindness to the living and to the dead. And Naomi said unto her, the man is near of kin unto us, one of our next kinsmen. So she said, first and foremost, the thing she says is, look, may God bless this man for caring about us. She knew he was next of kin and said, so in him doing this, she right away saw, that's how you brought so much home in one day. He is doing this for you. Because of me and because of Elimelech and Mahlon and Chilion, he's thinking of what he owes the family. We're all kinfolk here. And Ruth the Moabitess said, he said unto me also, thou shalt keep. She didn't know it was next to kin. Now she does. But she said, well, he said unto me also, thou shalt keep fast by my young men until they have ended all my harvest. And Naomi said unto her, now Naomi is Jewish. She knows the law. She knows the customs. She knows the lay of the land. Ruth just says, well, the man's name is Boaz. Well, he's related to us through Elimelech. Your father-in-law is dead. Okay, she would have understood that, but maybe she didn't really understand the implications. She says, well, he told me to stay there, stay with him. He talked to me, and he told me, here's all he told me. She still don't understand the implications. Naomi does. And Naomi said unto Ruth, her daughter-in-law, it is good, my daughter, that thou go out with his maidens, that they meet thee not in any other field. So here's again where I see in this, she wasn't sure, but what Ruth could run into some problems. So he says, it'd be good if men don't find you in another field. They might. Not everybody's good. We understand that concept really well in our day and time. So in ancient times, it was also true. You wouldn't want a strange girl that nobody knew and was out of town just show up anywhere. It might not turn out good. She said, that's good. Stay with his handmaidens. So she kept fast by the maidens of Boaz to glean unto the end of barley harvest and of wheat harvest, and dwelt with her mother-in-law. So here at the close of chapter 2, what we get is the whole picture. Now it's going to go back in chapter 3 and focus on a moment. But what it's saying is, from that day to the end of the harvest, however long that was, she always went out day after day. And when barley harvest was done, that she did wheat harvest or whatever harvesting was going on, Ruth was allowed, not just allowed, but she did it. See, you can tell people nowadays, I've got a job lined up for you. Oh, thanks a lot. But they don't do it. See, she did it. She didn't just talk about it. She did it. She didn't just show up. She did it. So the Bible's saying here, looking ahead, saying this was the start of the barley harvest, and she stuck with it till it was all done. All right, we're going to ask Brother Harlan, if you would, to dismiss the class.